The very first scene of Michael Haneke's first theatrical film, The Seventh Continent, unapologetically demonstrates concerns that resonate throughout the next 30 years and 9 subsequent films. The viewer is immediately subjected to fragmentation, routine, austerity, and alienation. Despite a wheel being right in front of the patriarch of what we will find out to be a straight-laced bourgeois family, neither of the two faceless people we see have any control, any agency in this or the rest of their lives. From the very beginning, they are positioned as mere spectators of a largely routinized, mechanized world. This status of audience is highlighted in the theatrical, widescreen cropping of the windshield, silhouetting the two as if they were in the theater with us. The family shelters themselves, segmenting the world for their digestibility, convenience, and lewd spectatorship. The stage this is set with is the family's personal car. The car is an obsession with this movie. In a film of strict routine and cold materialism, the car is the object of possibly the most attention. The Seventh Continent takes place on 3 days over 3 years, from 1987 to 1989, and each of these segments contains extremely regular scenes of the family's personal vehicle leaving their house, driving coldly along Austria's highways, being put through the car wash, and then safely returned to the family's home and eventual sarcophagus. The car, however, is not a mere receiver of attention, but an active tool of the family. It functions as transport, storage, and staging ground. The most important function, though, comes in its protection of the family from the violence of the outside world. Violence bubbles under the surface of this film, but as the subject is the family, the only perspective we get of it is through their eyes. In one of the most chilling scenes of the film, the family, driving along a highway late at night, is spectator to the aftermath of a fatal car accident, the rain and machinery outside echoing the brutal white noise of the opening car wash. As Peter Brunette writes, quote, "The images in the car wash, a repetitive motif in the film, are, in a manner of speaking, violent from the first, in the harsh sounds produced by the mechanism itself and in the alienating blasts from the soaping agent and the brushes. The family is undertaking that most bourgeois of tasks, the cleansing ritual of washing the family car, and are protected from the artificial constructions that rage around them, if also isolated by the metal frame they inhabit and that seems to hold them frozen in place." This accidental alienation reaches its logical conclusion in the final chapter of the film, in which the family hunkers themselves in their home and systematically goes about the destruction of their material property and then themselves. However, just as the family attempts to merely spectate the violence of the world and in doing so further fragments and contributes to the violent white noise of the urban space, so too does their attempt at rejecting the outer trappings of the world merely serve to recreate the routine violence of their modern existence. There is nothing liberating or cathartic about this destruction, as it is played out and presented just as their confining life of the past 3 years is. The one object shown mercy in this material genocide is the car, which is beforehand simply liquidated into cash that will later be disposed of in a numbingly repetitive cycle of flushing it down the toilet, a further noise element. During the final shots of the film, the trigger for the father's life flashing before his eyes is the white noise through the TV screen, just like the white noise he has been viewing the entire film through his self-damning, privileged safe space, his personal car.
Jetzt bin ich dran.
The subject of the car and other personal modes of transportation being tools of bourgeois consumption and distancing also plays into Haneke's most shocking work, Funny Games. As in The Seventh Continent, Funny Games begins with an apparent routine of the bourgeois family, and also like The Seventh Continent, the film concerns this family's relationship to violence. Adding to this similarity is Haneke's strict adherence to naming his familial characters the same film to film, George, Georg, or George as the father, Anne, Anna, or Anne as the mother, and either Georgie or Ava for the child. However, Funny Games differs heavily from The Seventh Continent by bringing the violence the family has been ignoring or commodifying to their literal front door. All of these ideas, again, can be expressed by the use of the family's personal car. The iconic opening of Funny Games shows the family in an eponymous game of their own. This game is one of naming the performers, composers, and pieces of classical music that the family has neatly stored in the CD compartment of their boat-hauling vehicle. Just as in the beginning of The Seventh Continent, the viewer is first denied the family's face, denied identification with characters who have, in a way, sacrificed their humanity for these material comforts. As Haneke himself states in an interview with Michael Ciotat, Funny Games was meant as a metaphor for a society that has turned inward and excluded the exterior world. Men today live in prisons they've created for themselves. They can't escape. This sacrifice seems like a necessary one to operate in a bourgeois space, as the only time we see the bourgeois characters interacting with each other is through the medium of either the car or another upper-middle-class item, the personal sailboat. However, just as these items can be ones of the faux interactions we see the family in with other families, these material items are also entrapping. After the family enters their sequestered compound, the next hour of torture is subjected to the family in absolute isolation. After the son is killed and the murderers, Paul and Peter, steal the family car and leave, Anna makes her escape from her prison grounds, only to have to rely on whether she'll trust the cars passing by anonymously to help. Because of mistrust, she misses the first car. Because of her faith, she gets the second car, the one her tormentors stole and which will bring her back to her death. As can be seen, however, there's a disruption here. The case so far has been the car as purely an object of the bourgeoisie, but here it is flipped on its head and appropriated by the mysterious killers. Just as Paul and Peter beat Georg with his golf club, so too do they steal their boat, which they then use to unceremoniously kill Anna and dock at yet another sequestered compound. Thinking Paul is a benign visitor, given he has the outer trappings and mannerisms of an upper-middle-class youth visiting on his family's boat, the owner of the house invites him in, with the insinuation that the damning carnage will continue. This disruption reaches its apex in 71 fragments in a chronology of chance, which can be seen as Haneke's early thesis statement in regards to concerns about transportation. While there are many instances in this film when vehicles are positioned just as they have been before in Haneke's filmography, we see a new fold into this idea. Personal transportation is augmented. While remaining a force of segregation of socioeconomic class, it's now a method by which capital and immigrants may covertly enter and operate in urban spaces. In the beginning of the film, a young Romanian immigrant hitches a ride into Vienna in the back of an appliance van, where he's introduced to the pedestrian hostile space he is to operate in for the next couple months, leading up to his high-minded adoption by a concerned bourgeois couple. By the violent end of the film, the young boy is again being transported in a car. In between, though, we see the boy navigate public space, which is simultaneously a space of connection and fragmentation. With this, the viewer is confronted with a new fluidity of what European statehood means in a world of such transportation. Two threads in this film concern the transportation of capital and illicit goods via private transportation. The first of these is the glacial, cryptic movement of stolen military firearms to a university student. The guns are brought through military checkpoints via a van, exchanged in public spaces, then stored in the car of the student. The student's vehicle is then an agent of agitation when he gets into an all-too-common situation, that of stressing out about a gas payment. During the stressful episode, the student suddenly murders many people in a bank, retreating back to his safe space, his car, to then end his own life. The bank is the converging location for the film's multiple threads, and with this is also the location of the repetitive motif of an official bank vehicle descending the depths, crossing checkpoints, and exchanging anonymous briefcases. These transactions are framed as essentially having no human element, with much of the communication being between the vehicle and the systems inside the bank. For a final note, it's worth mentioning Haneke's French language features, especially Code Unknown. With Haneke now going international himself, his concerns do so as well. These films all display shades of post-colonial immigration concerns and guilt through transportation, As Haneke stated in the same interview mentioned before, the theme of guilt is present in all my films. Starting with a lesser-known Haneke feature, the post-apocalyptic Time of the Wolf opens much like Funny Games, with a bourgeois family going to a summer home of theirs, only to find a murderous threat within. With the father killed, the mother and her children find themselves in a sort of refugee space along a railroad line. Waves of immigrants saturate the depot, and the film's tensions emerge from wrestling with the conflicts this brings about. Just like the Austrian films, personal transportation, here, horses, are expressions and instruments of power. Moving on to Cachet, we are treated to another parable about France's relation to and guilt about its former colonial subjects and European neighbors. The bourgeois main character, Georges, is bombarded by anonymous videotapes that can be seen as a filmic manifestation of national guilt. Georges is destabilized by this, with much of the reason coming from his assumption that the tapes are sent by an Algerian from his past. The tapes go so far as to video the exteriors of Georges' private urban spaces, including one of the most bold moves where the videographer takes a car to Georges' childhood home. In the second-to-last shot of the film, we see a flashback depicting the wresting of the then-young Algerian from his would-be adoptive parents, being taken away in a car. Moving on to Code Unknown, we see possibly the most diverse use of urban space and transportation in Haneke's filmography. An example of this is the extremely long opening shot, showing a pedestrian encounter between a young French boy, a Romanian woman he disrespects, and a francophone African immigrant who calls the French boy out on his failure of hospitality. When the police get involved in this, the result is the Romanian woman's deportation from France via an airplane, and the beginning of the threads of the film. Going back to Brunette, in this fashion, the three interconnected stories are set into motion. What comes across most clearly in this initiating scene is the tension and ill feeling that reigns in the contemporary multicultural urban space. An extremely similar situation involving these anxieties occurs in a subway near the end of the film. Arab teens accost one of the central characters, another An played by Juliette Binoche, with an older Arab man, similar to the African character in the beginning, stepping in to scold the boys for their failure of hospitality. This idea of hospitality in urban space can be extended to an anxiety underpinning much of the film. As Paula E. Gay writes, in the film, the most grievous, large-scale failure of hospitality is that of the recent Balkan Wars. The mutilated and murdered Muslim citizens of Kosovo might be seen as victims of the Serbs' brutal failure of hospitality as fellow citizens of Yugoslavia. Based on this, we can see that the heart of the conflict in the film is one of space, and how we are to share it. This concern about space is one that connects all of Haneke's films, whether it be the compounds that the bourgeois characters in Funny Games and The Seventh Continent use as fortresses from the outside world, or the anxieties about shared space in a post-colonial, war-torn Europe in his French features. Transportation in its many modes may be seen as an extension or the purest expression of Haneke's concerns about modern life, with the greatest instrument of fragmentation, of class separation, of spectatorship, being the personal car.